Okay, the next context that we have is a jumble sentence. Now, look at the average time taken for this, 209 seconds. Accuracy is only 15%. The word order is fine in the context. Now, let's look at this. So, we have A, B, C, D, E, F. 6 sentences. As usual, we'll have to figure out the context. For a jumble sentence, right, ideally you should be able to complete this within a minute or 2 minutes. See, if you look at the context, I'm not reading anything, I'm just looking for repeat words and phrases. Let's look at that first, right? I have in the first sentence A, I have Mr. Rohani, this character. The second sentence does not have direct reference to him. The third sentence again has Mr. Rohani. Then the fourth sentence again does not have direct reference to him. He has one, I'm assuming it's Mr. Rohani because he's mentioned again here. His focus, because we're talking about Mr. Rohani, seems to be the only character here. So it has to be Mr. Rohani. Out of the 6 sentences, 4 of them are directly making reference to this person, right? So if this is the case, look at a context or a sentence which is introducing this person who has been repeated so many times in this paragraph. So can you identify which is that sentence which is introducing Mr. Rohani? At the same time, keep looking for repeat phrases. First term, second term, first term. So all of this matters. Has anybody identified Chandra Neeraj? Let me take Chandra Neeraj's sequence. I'm going to take DBAECF, right? Look for connecting sentence as well. Ideally, if you're someone who is going to find it difficult, or if it's taking more than a minute or 2 minutes for you, I would advise you to skip this question and move to the next question. You can come back if you have the time to do this, right? For a question like this, usually what happens is, if you're not in the habit of identifying repeat words, phrases, trying to figure out, topic sentences, or at least get links, connecting sentences, the best thing to do is to skip it. You cannot be spending more than 1.5 to 2 minutes on a question like this. If it is taking longer than that, move on. But for the purpose of explanation, I'm going to go back and explain this to you. Okay, let's get back to the context. So somebody says D, a lot of you others are saying A. But if I look at all of these contexts, the context that is introducing Mr. Rohani, right, even if it says now that he has won, the spotlight turns on the challenges ahead. That's another phrase that I need to keep in mind because I've looked at some challenges that have been explained in the context. In the first term, Mr. Rohani treaded cautiously, right? How did he tread cautiously in the first term? Again, I have first term, right? I'm going to move to A. And then it says before that, treaded cautiously. Even though I have first term, here it's talking about something that he did not do. But how else did he tread cautiously? The question that you need to ask is, how did he tread cautiously? You need to look for context that is answering this question. Okay? So let's look at context answering this question. F says his focus was on the nuclear negotiations Iran was undertaking with 6 world powers, and he was averse to upsetting the conservative establishment. Averse to upsetting the conservative establishment means he didn't want to take any risk. He didn't want to upset something that has been established, like traditionally, this is what this establishment follows or practices. He didn't want to upset that one. His record in offering most civil liberties fell short of expectations, as young Iranians are still waiting for meaningful changes in the clergy-defined social order. And if you look at A, I'm connecting first term, it says, the reformist politicians who were put under house arrest in 2011 are still not free, and Mr. Rohani hardly spoke for them during his first term. And unemployment has not eased under. So basically, Mr. Rohani did not do much, right? So the two contexts that are answering how did he tread cautiously is F and A, where it says he was averse to upsetting the conservative establishment, and in his first term he did not do much for whatever the issues were. So instead of D, though the president is the highest elected official of the republic, real powers lie in the hands of the supreme leader, this context will come into place later. Right? E is the one introducing Mr. Rohani. F and A are answering the question how he tread. To tread cautiously means what? What is the meaning of to tread cautiously? Anybody? Basically, it means to avoid saying or doing anything that could cause difficulties. So he did not want to upset anybody. He did not take any action against anybody, right? That's how he treaded cautiously. EFA. And then, so what happened after his first term? The next thing, consequence in terms of events. Now that the nuclear deal is done and he has a second term, it is time for Mr. Rouhani to act boldly. It is unrealistic to expect radical changes in a society that is tightly controlled by the Ayatollahs. Okay. So EFA, C, and then D and B. Look at D and B. It says, though the president is the highest elected official of the republic, real powers lie in the hands of the supreme leader. Any attempt to introduce rapid changes will meet with strong resistance from the deep state. But presidents can pursue a gradualist reform agenda with popular support. So basically, D and B, right? D states that even though the president is the highest elected official of the republic, real powers lie in the hands of the supreme leader. And sentence B, in fact, supports this by stating that the president might encounter strong resistance if he introduces any rapid changes and needs popular support to move forward. So DB is definitely a link. So DB as a link you got right, but everything else a little all over the place, right? But for a context like this, I would say the best thing to do is to skip this. Why? Because now if you look at the E as a topic sentence, right? He has one. Somebody might come back and say, why, how can this E be the topic sentence? Because who is this he referring to, right? Somebody might come back and say that is the issue here. I want to quickly highlight something here. Now for jumble sentence, usually what happens is it's taken from a larger article, right? It's a third paragraph or a fourth paragraph or a fifth paragraph taken from a bigger article. Now what happens is, honestly, if you ask me, some of these questions are not selected intelligently, meaning I'm sure there is a context introducing Rouhani earlier, but given the sentences that we have, because we're talking about this is what he did in the first term, these are the challenges he faced, now that he's moved to the second term, let him do this. In terms of sequence, yes, we have a sequence, I've given you the sequence, but if you are confused for a question type like this, the ideal thing to do is to skip and not waste time. You'd rather focus on questions where you can get and be sure of the marks that you've obtained rather than wasting time and getting all the answers wrong, right? Because every wrong answer, you have a negative marking. Keep that in mind. Let's go back. This would be the ideal sequence given the context that we have. But I also feel that definitely there is context prior to this having introduced Mr. Rouhani. So those of you who are, not following this, maybe you can pause later and go back and try and understand the explanation that I had given for the sequence. But let's not spend a lot of time here. Yeah, so if you've got the sequence right, then you might as well answer the questions, which is what is following, right? Which of the following will be the second? Second would be, second one is F. And I always keep saying this, if you get the concept, the sequence right, always number them. It's easier to answer the questions. EFA, CDB, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So second is F. First is E. D, that would be the fifth one, right? And the third one is A. So if you get all of this right, that's how it goes. There are lots of tricks, Laksh, for jumble sentences, but sometimes for some questions, you can't apply a whole load of tricks. If you look at the question pattern that we saw, we've only able to identify based on the sentences we have a logical sequence. However, like I said, most of you might get confused this is a higher difficulty level, I would say, right? It does not have very clear descriptive clue words or antonym clue words or things like that. So the best thing to do is, because you will invariably end up wasting a lot of time, is to skip this question.